Hello and welcome to Daily Bible Reading on the Red Letter Truth. Today I've decided to read one little verse and spend a whole lot of time talking about it. And instead of reading the whole chapter, I'm going to read it's actually 4 verses, but just a little section of the chapter. But I think it's imperative to do this. It's important to do this and discuss because I've heard so many different takes on this particular topic and subject, and it's just so confusing to me why people say what they say and think what they think. I'm dumbfounded in a lot of ways on some of these things that I hear. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Please comment, like, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to read Exodus chapter 20, and I'm only going to read 8 through 11, and most of you know what that is. I mean, the King James Version, and Exodus 28 through 11 is that made it sound like Exodus 28. Exodus 20, chapter 20, verses 8 through 11. And that has to deal with the 4th commandment. And we all know what the 4th commandment pertains to, and that is the Sabbath rest of Jehovah God, who set that day aside, his day of rest at creation. When he had finished all the work of creation, he rested and commands us to do the same on the day that he set aside and sanctified and made holy, not the day that men set aside and try to claim as holy. So, we're going to read chapter 20, Exodus, verses 8 through 11, and then I'm going to spend some time talking about it because I've heard several things as to why we don't have to keep the Sabbath of the Lord thy God, and none of which are biblical, none of which are rational, in my opinion. Thanks for tuning in. Exodus 20, starting in verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. What day was that? It doesn't say, but a 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God, or any 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days Jehovah made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore Jehovah blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Okay, so that's the 4th commandment. Pretty straightforward. There's a lot in here. Some is obvious, some not quite so obvious. But we know that the 4th commandment is the longest commandment by far. 94 words in length. We know that it starts with the word remember, which is hey, don't forget this. I'm telling you, you need to do this, okay? Don't forget this. So that makes it pretty important. This commandment was spoken by the mouth of God and written twice by the finger of God. So, of course, they all were, but I mean, this commandment, I think it's, I shouldn't take the liberty to say this, but seeing that it starts with the word remember, it's way longer than any other commandment. It's pretty much smack dab in the middle of the commandments. And it identifies who our Creator is. It tells us what day He rested and what day He wants us to rest, or actually is commanding us to rest. And that we're not to not only induce labor, do any labor ourselves, but to induce anyone else to labor. I think it's very, very important to God. And I think that if, again, I probably shouldn't say this, but this is a feeling I get, that if you ask God, He would, of course He wants us to keep all the commandments, but I think He would show partiality to this one. And I could be wrong, but I just feel like He would say, I like the fourth commandment. But I don't know that. But I'm sorry. I don't mean anything ill by it. I'm just saying it just seems to me that it's quite important to God when He says remember, when he makes it 94 words long, when He says you got to rest because I rested. He says what day it is. It identifies Him as our Creator. It identifies the fact that He hallowed this day and made it holy. It shows us that we're not to work nor make anyone else work on our behalf. So I think it's important to God. They're all important to God. But anyway, the point I want to make is, how many times have I heard people try to justify not keeping the Sabbath of the Lord thy God, not man's Sabbath, not a first day Sabbath, but trying to justify not keeping the seventh day biblical Sabbath that God, Jehovah God, set aside at creation. Well, I don't have to do that. That's for the Jews. That's for the Jews. Okay, stop. All right. It's the fourth commandment. Are you saying that the 10 commandments are only for the Jews? Let's just get this out of the way. Are you saying that the 10 commandments are only for the Jews? I ain't saying that. Okay, what are you saying? You don't have to keep the Sabbath because that's only for the Jews. So you're saying that the fourth commandment's only for the Jews, but the other 9 is for the Jews and everybody else too? Or are you saying that the Jews are the only people that have to keep all the commandments? Or are you saying that the Jews have to keep the fourth and none of the rest? Are you saying that, what are you saying? I don't understand. Because if the fourth commandment is only for the Jews, then that means I don't have to keep the fourth commandment because I'm not Jewish. And does that mean I got to keep the rest of them? Or can I just chuck them all and it's just leave it up to the Jews to keep them? I mean, I don't understand. That's what I don't understand when people say that. Well, that's for the Jews. It's the fourth commandment, okay? Last time I checked, everyone's supposed to keep all 10 commandments. So I don't understand the rationale. If you want to call it that, I don't even think you can call it rationale. I don't keep the Sabbath because it's for the Jews. Do you go to church on Sunday? Yeah. Okay, well, what commandment is that? I mean, why are you doing that then? You're not going to keep God's commandment. It doesn't say you have to go to church on Sabbath, but it tells you to rest. But you're claiming your first day Sabbath for you. Do you rest on that Sabbath? Do you rest on the first day? Do you do anything that would constitute labor on your quote-unquote Sabbath? So not only are you keeping the wrong day, but you're violating it on top of it. Just like I told someone not long ago, you got all these people that observe a first day Sabbath. They go to church on a first day Sabbath, or they're claiming it to be their Sabbath. Some people go to church on the first day of the week and claim a different day to be their Sabbath. I have sat in a Sunday church and had people tell me that the Sabbath can be any day you want it to be. Even after I read the fourth commandment to them in a Sunday church, I read the fourth commandment to them. The preacher went as far, when they did a reading, not the most recent time, because I went back and looked at the video. I'm not at that church anymore and haven't been, but the last time they did it, they read Exodus 20 all the way through. The time when I was still there, they read Exodus 20, 1 through 7, skipped 8 through 11, and went 12 through, I think, well, they didn't go all the way through the end of the chapter, but 12 through 17, which in King James ends the commandments. So they omitted 8 through 11, which is the heart of the fourth commandment. No, I apologize. I apologize. They omitted omitted verse 10. I'm sorry, 10, the heart of the fourth commandment. They omitted, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. So the verse that tells you what day the Sabbath actually is, they omitted it. Even on the bulletin that he had printed. I may have it here, actually. I may have it in here, so I'm not quoting wrong here. I know I used to have it in here where the preacher, they typed up the bulletin. I'm sorry to be shuffling papers, but I thought I had it in here where I could confirm what I'm saying without making a mistake. The preacher, when I confronted him about it, I know I have it in here somewhere. When I confronted him about it and asked him why they omitted the verse showing, I apologize, I'm sure you don't want to see me flip through the scriptures here. I know it's in here somewhere, because I remember having it in here. I asked him why they omitted it, and he said it was a typographical error in the church bulletin. I said, a typographical error? He said, yeah, it's just, we made a mistake when we printed a bulletin. I said, okay, even if you made a mistake when you printed a bulletin, you still didn't read those verses that the bulletin omitted. Just because the bulletin omitted, for whatever reason, that a Sunday church would automatically omit the heart of the fourth commandment telling you what day the Sabbath of the Lord thy God is. I'm sorry, I can't find it. I thought I had it in here. But if you had a typographical error situation, which is not likely, I'm sorry, but you could still read from the scripture what the actual commandment says and not cherry pick and say, well, I'm going to read these verses. I'm going to skip verse 10 because it tells you it's the seventh day, and we don't go on the seventh day. We go on the first day, and we don't want to be reading that stuff. But anyway, back to the argument of confusion, which I stated. I don't understand why people say it's only for the Jews. The fourth commandment's only for the Jews. So I need to pin them down and say, okay, does that mean the Jews are the only ones who have to keep that day? Do they have to keep the rest of them? Do we have to keep any of them? It's just totally ridiculous, flawed argument, because they want to justify not keeping the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. But we know the fourth commandment directs us to keep the seventh day in honor of Jehovah God and his rest that he took at creation, that he expects us to keep in our lives. And I'm so thankful that God has shown me this from his word, and that he has empowered me and enabled me to have that day off to honor it and keep it holy. Thank you. God bless.